In 1938, deep in the storerooms of the Baghdad Museum, an archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig came across an object that seemed utterly ordinary. A clay jar about the size of a man's hand. But when he examined it closely, he discovered something startling. Inside was a copper cylinder, carefully fitted, and within that, an iron rod. The jar was sealed with asphalt, as if designed to contain something volatile. It looked less like an artifact of antiquity and more like a piece of forgotten technology. Later experiments revealed that if the jar were filled with an acidic liquid, such as vinegar or lemon juice, it could generate a small electric charge. The so-called Baghdad Battery instantly became one of archaeology's greatest enigmas. Was this truly a battery, crafted nearly 2,000 years before Benjamin Franklin, long before Faraday or Edison? Or was it simply a misunderstood container, stripped of its true purpose by the passage of time? A clay jar had become a lightning rod for mystery. To understand the enigma of the Baghdad Battery, we must travel back 2 millennia to the time of the Parthian Empire. Stretching across Mesopotamia between 200 BC and 200 AD, the Parthians ruled a crossroads of civilizations, between Rome to the west and Persia to the east. They inherited traditions from Babylon, Assyria, and the Persians, blending cultures into a vibrant mosaic of art, trade, and science. The clay jar was found near Baghdad, once part of this Parthian world. Its discovery suggested that perhaps the people of this era were not only warriors and traders, but experimenters. Could they have stumbled upon a way to harness natural forces, to capture lightning in clay? If so, why are there no records of its use? Why no descriptions of electricity in Parthian texts or inscriptions? The jar sits at a crossroads of speculation, between the brilliance of lost science and the simplicity of everyday craft. Its presence in the Parthian world is both tantalizing and confounding. The Baghdad jar is not impressive at first glance, just a plain vessel, rough, unadorned, and modest in size. But inside its clay walls rests a puzzle. A copper sheet rolled into a cylinder, an iron rod placed at its center, and traces of asphalt used to seal the top. These components, when combined with an acidic liquid, form the simplest of electrochemical cells. Modern replicas have proven the point. Fill the jar with vinegar, insert the rod, and a current flows. Small, but measurable. The voltage is low, perhaps less than 1 volt, yet enough to produce a spark, to tingle the skin, or to plate thin layers of metal. This discovery stunned researchers. Could ancient craftsmen really have understood the principles of electricity long before its modern discovery? Or did they merely stumble upon the effect by accident, unaware of its true potential? The jar's anatomy whispers of possibility, a blueprint for power hidden in clay. If the Baghdad Battery truly produced electricity, what was it for? Some suggest it was used for electroplating, covering objects with thin layers of gold or silver. Artifacts with unusual surfaces have been cited as possible evidence, though proof remains uncertain. Others argue it served a ritual purpose. Imagine a priest, hidden behind curtains, using the jar to create sparks or mild shocks, an impressive display of divine power to awe the faithful. Still others propose it was a medical device, delivering a faint current for therapeutic purposes, echoing practices seen much later in history. Each theory speaks to human ingenuity and imagination, but none can be confirmed. Without written records, the jar remains silent. It offers us only possibilities, leaving us to wonder whether the Parthians had glimpsed a force far ahead of their time, or whether we are projecting our own science backward onto a vessel that never held such intent. From the moment Koenig described the Baghdad jar as a battery, scholars have been divided. Skeptics argue that no other artifacts support the idea. They say the jar may simply have held sacred scrolls, papyrus, or small objects, its copper lining a form of protection rather than technology. To them, the battery label is an anachronism, a modern fantasy imposed on the past. Yet others insist the evidence is compelling. If the jar can function as a battery today, why dismiss the possibility it was designed as one? Did the ancients discover a principle of nature but fail to exploit it widely? The debate continues, echoing through journals, documentaries, and exhibitions. In this controversy lies the heart of the Baghdad Battery's allure. It is a mystery that resists resolution, a simple clay jar that forces us to question the boundaries of ancient knowledge. What did the Parthians truly know? And what have we lost in the sands of Mesopotamia? Imagine a Parthian craftsman pouring vinegar or fermented grape juice into the clay jar. The copper and iron begin to react, a faint charge flowing between them. A spark, small but real, could be drawn by touching the terminals with a piece of metal. For modern researchers, such a moment is thrilling, proof that the jar is more than a container. For the ancients, if they indeed experimented this way, it must have seemed like magic, lightning captured in clay. The possibility that electricity was harnessed, even in its most primitive form, transforms our understanding of the ancient world. It suggests that curiosity, trial, and ritual could intersect to reveal forces unseen. Yet whether these sparks were truly generated in antiquity or only in modern laboratories remains the great question. Still, the jar stands as an emblem of what might have been, a glimpse of power far ahead of its time. One of the most intriguing theories is that the Baghdad Battery was used for electroplating. By passing current through a solution of metal salts, thin layers of gold or silver can be deposited onto objects. Some jewelry from the region shows unusual surfaces, leading to speculation that such techniques may have been attempted. If true, this would mean ancient artisans had stumbled upon a process modern science rediscovered only centuries later. Gold-plated figurines and ornaments could have dazzled with brilliance beyond their intrinsic value, enhancing status and sacredness. But no workshop or inscription confirms this practice. The evidence is circumstantial, tantalizing, but incomplete. Still, the image of Parthian jewelers wielding hidden electricity to gild their treasures is irresistible, an echo of technology centuries ahead of its age, hidden behind clay jars and lost traditions. It leaves us wondering whether the glow of ancient ornaments carried more than just the shine of gold. Another possibility is ritual. Priests in Mesopotamia were keepers of mystery, guardians of unseen powers. What if the Baghdad Battery was used to create sparks or mild shocks during ceremonies? A concealed jar connected with wires or metal could startle worshippers with a sudden jolt, interpreted as the touch of a god. Such displays of divine fire would reinforce authority, transforming natural forces into sacred experience. Archaeologists point out that electricity, even in small doses, carries symbolic weight, invisible, untouchable, yet undeniable. If used this way, the jar was not science in our sense, but theater, ritual technology binding belief with sensation. Though no written texts confirm such rites, the idea lingers. Ancient priests channeling sparks to awe their followers, turning clay and copper into instruments of faith. The battery then becomes less about power and more about persuasion. Electricity has long been linked with healing. In the 18th and 19th centuries, physicians experimented with mild shocks for pain relief and stimulation. Could the Baghdad Battery have served a similar role 2,000 years earlier? If touched to the skin, the jar's current produces a faint tingling, perhaps interpreted as therapeutic, a cleansing of illness by unseen forces. Some speculate it may have been used in folk medicine, applied in rituals of purification or recovery. In a culture where spirit and body were intertwined, such sensations might be seen as proof of divine intervention. Though no medical texts from the Parthians describe this, the possibility cannot be ruled out. If the jar was used to heal, it would stand as a testament to humanity's timeless search for wellness, whether through herbs, prayer, or sparks captured in clay. Even in mystery, it speaks of our enduring hope to cure and to comfort. For all the speculation, one fact remains. There is silence in the record. No Parthian or Sassanid text mentions electricity, batteries, or sparks. No illustrations depict wires or plating workshops. Archaeologists caution against leaping to conclusions without evidence. Perhaps the jar's resemblance to a battery is coincidence, its true function far more mundane. It may have stored scrolls, held sacred oils, or served as a ritual container. Theories multiply because the artifact itself is mute, offering no explanation. And yet, silence can be as powerful as words. It leaves space for imagination, for questions that inspire generations to investigate. Was the Baghdad Battery truly a technological marvel, or merely a vessel misunderstood? In its silence lies its power, to provoke, to puzzle, and to remind us that the past is never as simple as we think. One of the most enduring theories is that the Baghdad Battery was used for electroplating. If filled with an acidic liquid, the copper and iron components could create a weak electric current. When connected to a solution of metal salts, this current might deposit thin layers of gold or silver onto objects. Proponents point to jewelry and ornaments from Mesopotamia with unusual metallic surfaces. Could they have been gilded with this lost technology? The idea is seductive. Imagine artisans secretly harnessing electricity to dazzle kings and priests with treasures that glowed brighter than wealth alone. Yet no workshop, tool, or inscription confirms this practice. Skeptics argue the irregular surfaces can be explained by traditional methods of hammering and gilding. The electroplating hypothesis remains unproven, but it captures the imagination because it suggests a leap across centuries, a bridge from clay jars to the principles of modern science. Whether true or not, it lingers as one of archaeology's most fascinating what-ifs. Another school of thought places the battery in the realm of religion. Electricity, even in small doses, carries a sense of mystery. It is invisible, untouchable, yet undeniable when felt. Some propose that priests may have used the jars to create sparks or mild shocks during rituals, convincing worshippers that divine energy was present. A faint glow, a spark leaping between metals, or a tingling sensation on the skin could be interpreted as the touch of gods. Such use would fit within the theatrical nature of ancient religion, where spectacle reinforced belief. Supporters of this view see the Baghdad Battery not as lost science, but as sacred technology, a tool of persuasion and awe. Critics counter that this is pure speculation, based on our fascination with electricity rather than evidence. Still, the idea remains compelling. A ritual of shock and wonder where faith and force converged in the flicker of a spark. Some have suggested the jars might have been used for healing. Electricity has long been linked with therapy, from ancient fish that delivered shocks to modern devices for pain relief. If the Baghdad Battery could generate even a small current, it might have been applied to the body as a form of treatment. The faint tingle might have been seen as purifying, driving out illness, or restoring balance. In a culture where the line between spiritual and physical health was blurred, such sensations could easily be interpreted as divine healing. Yet no Parthian medical texts survive to confirm this, and no instruments have been found to suggest systematic use. For many scholars, the medical theory is more imaginative than factual, but it speaks to something timeless: humanity's endless search for remedies, from herbs to rituals to sparks in a clay jar. The battery, real or imagined, fits into this eternal quest to heal. Not all accept the idea of ancient electricity. Skeptics argue the Baghdad Battery is simply a storage vessel, perhaps for scrolls, papyri, or sacred oils. The copper sheet and iron rod could have been corrosion byproducts, not deliberate design. They point out the absence of multiple jars connected in series, which would be necessary for significant current. If electricity was known, why are there no records, no wires, no tools designed for its use? To skeptics, calling it a battery is an anachronism, a modern projection onto a past that never knew such power. They warn that fascination with lost technologies risks blurring history with fantasy. Yet even skeptics admit the jar is unusual. Its form is not easily explained, and its presence continues to provoke debate. Sometimes mystery endures not because answers are hidden, but because evidence is too thin to settle the truth. The Baghdad Battery sits at the crossroads of science and myth. Whether a true electrochemical cell, a ritual object, or a misunderstood container, it forces us to confront the limits of what we know about the past. Theories swirl because the jar refuses to fit neatly into any single category. To believers in lost knowledge, it is proof that ancient civilizations reached further than history records. To skeptics, it is a lesson in humility, evidence that we must resist imposing modern science onto ancient artifacts. And to the wider world, it is simply a captivating enigma, a clay vessel that sparks imagination as surely as it may once have sparked electricity. Its power lies not only in what it did, but in what it makes us ask. How much of history is still hidden? What knowledge lies buried, waiting to be rediscovered or reimagined in the ruins of forgotten empires? In the 19th century, when Western scientists first experimented with electricity, the Baghdad Battery was rediscovered. Its form so closely resembled their own early cells that they could not help but imagine a parallel. It was as though ancient Mesopotamia had whispered across centuries, offering a clue that power could be drawn from the meeting of metal and acid. Even if the jar was never used this way in antiquity, its resemblance to modern batteries is uncanny. The artifact reminds us that invention is often a continuum, many hands across many cultures touching the same mysteries. Today, scientists build replicas to test its capacity, measuring the faint volts it can generate. Though small, the results are enough to power curiosity, the most essential current of all. The jar, silent for millennia, has become part of the story of electricity itself, a humble clay vessel that stands beside Faraday and Volta as a symbol of human wonder. To many, the Baghdad Battery symbolizes more than a clay jar. It embodies the tantalizing possibility that history is incomplete, that civilizations may have touched knowledge we believe to be modern. This theme resonates deeply. The idea that brilliance can be discovered, lost, and rediscovered in cycles across time. Some see, in the battery, echoes of Atlantis, of vanished empires rumored to wield powers beyond their age. Others interpret it as a cautionary tale, reminding us how fragile knowledge can be when not preserved in writing or tradition. The jar asks us to remain humble. It is easy to think progress is linear, but what if it is scattered, uneven, fragile? What if sparks of genius flashed in unexpected places, only to fade, leaving us with questions rather than continuity? In that sense, the Baghdad Battery becomes less about electricity and more about memory, a symbol of all that slips between history's cracks. For Iraq, the Baghdad Battery is part of a vast and complex heritage. It connects the modern nation to the ingenuity of ancient Mesopotamia, a cradle of civilization where writing, law, and monumental architecture first arose. Displayed in museums, the jar inspires pride as well as curiosity. It reminds Iraqis and the world that this land has always been a place of innovation, of experimentation, of mystery. Amid wars and upheaval, artifacts like the battery endure as anchors of cultural identity. They also raise questions about the responsibility of preservation. Looting, neglect, and conflict threaten such treasures, yet their survival matters not just to Iraq, but to humanity at large. The Baghdad Battery's legacy is thus twofold: a mystery for scholars and a reminder of the importance of safeguarding the past. For in every clay jar lies not only knowledge, but the spirit of a people whose voices still echo across millennia. The debate over the Baghdad Battery highlights the tension between science and imagination. Strict evidence demands caution. Without documentation, no claim of ancient electricity can be proven. Yet imagination fuels inquiry, pushing us to test, replicate, and wonder. Both are necessary: science to anchor us, imagination to propel us forward. The artifact sits at this crossroads. Too strange to dismiss, too silent to explain, it remains an open question. Perhaps it was never a battery at all, and its fame is a modern invention. Or perhaps, in a forgotten workshop, a craftsman truly held sparks in his hand. We may never know. But the very act of asking enriches us, showing how objects from the past can ignite dialogue in the present. In this way, the Baghdad Battery generates a current of a different kind. Not electrical, but intellectual, flowing through generations of seekers. The Baghdad Battery remains one of archaeology's most enigmatic artifacts. A clay jar, a copper cylinder, an iron rod, simple materials, assembled in a way that seems to whisper of untold potential. Whether it was a tool of science, a ritual device, or merely a vessel, its power lies in its mystery. It reminds us that the ancient world was not static, but alive with curiosity, experiment, and imagination. The jar bridges ages, sparking debates that stretch from Mesopotamian priests to modern engineers. It invites us to see history not as a straight line of progress, but as a mosaic of questions, flashes of brilliance, and forgotten paths. And perhaps that is its true gift. Not the electricity it may have generated, but the wonder it continues to inspire. In its silence, the Baghdad Battery speaks louder than many discoveries, urging us never to stop asking, never to stop seeking, never to stop listening to the past.